Welcome to the Geary, Stein, and Stevens Show. I'm Troy Geary alongside my co-hosts Will Stein and Dave Stevens. Our podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, and also the Sideline Sports Network. You can also catch us on YouTube. I'm going to kick it over to Dave to introduce our guest today.
Hey, guys, I am so excited to be with you guys, and thanks for letting me be a part of this. Our guest today, I have to give an introduction, but this guy needs no introduction. He was a 12-year NFL quarterback, played for the Lions. He played for the Bengals. He played for the Ravens, and he even started and played in place of Dan Marino back in the day for the Miami Dolphins. I'm talking about legendary Scott Mitchell, and he joins us today. Scott Mitchell joining us. And hey, Scott, thanks for being a part of the Geary, Stein, and Stevens Show. Thanks for joining us today. Where are you sitting? Scott, are you there?
I am.
Scott,
I don't know. I do now, yes.
Okay, go ahead. I just gave you a wonderful introduction about your career and everything. So tell us what you're doing these days and where have you been since football?
Oh my goodness, I've been all over the place, but right now I'm back home in Utah where I grew up. I do a radio show here in Salt Lake. It's a sports radio show every afternoon from 3 to 7 p.m. So it's fun to kind of keep my feet, I guess, in the sports world, and really enjoy doing it. I've got 5 grown kids. Most of them are married, and none of them are in jail. So life's pretty good.
Well, thank you for joining us. And, Troy and well, I got to talk about Will. He's a Vikings fan. What are some of your best memories when you played in that old sloppy, ugly Metrodome when you were part of the Lions for so long?
My memories of the actually I never won in the Metrodome, so I can't say I have any great memories. It was the most is John Tierlink and of course John Randall. It was my first year in Detroit, and I tell you guys, beat up like nobody's business. And later Henry Thomas was a teammate of mine in Detroit, and then John Randall, I had him on my podcast, and he was telling me about how he made it to the NFL. And John Randall was undrafted, and we actually were drafted the same year, 1990. And I said, how does a guy who's in the Hall of Fame not get drafted when they have 12 rounds in the draft? And he told me, he said that the only team that was interested in him was Minnesota Vikings, and he had to weigh 10 more pounds than he did at the time. And he went to Minnesota to weigh in, and he knew he wasn't at the weight they wanted. So he went to a hardware store. He bought one of those big giant chains with a lock. He wrapped it around his waist and tucked it in his sweats, and he weighed exactly 10 pounds, the 10 pounds he needed. And I said, so you mean to tell me that your Hall of Fame career started because you wrapped a chain around your waist? There's a funny story, but I always remember Jandal because he never stopped talking and knew every detail about your life. And he would sit there when you were in the huddle, and he's like, where's Springville, Utah? I've never heard of that. And he says, how's your mom do? And he said all these crazy things. And he was such an amazing player, but he talked so much that it actually was funny, and it kind of relaxed you in some ways. It was intended to be this psychological thing, and for me, it never actually worked that way.
Well, I know Troy wanted to get in and talk. You were talking a little bit about weight, and I know Troy wants to hit you up about some amazing parts of your life.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. You were on The Biggest Loser. How did that process start for you, and what was the experience like, and did that help you, decide to write the book?
Well, it was a massive accident. It wasn't something I certainly wanted to do. And, you don't want to go out publicly and show people the warts of your life or the struggles that you have, and it's a hard thing to actually come to terms with. I really initially did not want to do it. I turned it down, but I ultimately just said, I need to do this. I want to do this. And the biggest loser on the surface is it's just a reality TV show. Someone wins a prize at the end, and so all you do is you're trying to compete to lose the most weight. But for me, it became very personal. My dad died from diabetes and complications from diabetes and from just being overweight, and so it was it was not too long after he died. I had some amazing experiences on the show, as really incredible experience, just about a willingness to be vulnerable. And I think if we're gonna improve in our lives, if we're gonna go anywhere, there has to be this willingness to submit to a process and be vulnerable. And I don't know any more of a way to do that than to go in front of millions of people on a television camera in just a pair of shorts and show everyone your fat body. That was extremely humbling, and yet it was a very cathartic experience for me. In the just that willingness to submit to that was kind of the key and the way out. When you play in the NFL, like you never show weakness. You're just like, nothing's wrong. You're never hurt. You're never injured. And I grew up in that culture where you were always okay. And you couldn't have any problems, any issues, any challenges. And it's certainly different, I think, today. But so it was hard for me to get past that. I'm a tough guy. I'm okay. Everything is fine. And it was kind of a beautiful thing to find and discover in my life. And it's been wonderful to kind of move forward from that.
Well, we seem to keep having some issues with Will. Let's see if Will is back. Will Stein, are you out there? You wanted to ask a couple of questions to Scott while we still have you.
Sorry about my internet connection, fellas, but so obviously being in Detroit and me being a Vikings fan, you have the Pontiac Silverdome that you played in, and you had the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome. How would you compare the environment of those two stadiums?
Well, the environment sucked. I mean, for anyone who had to go play in those places, it was brutal. The Detroit was such a hard place to travel to. I mean, you go to the airport in Detroit, and you're an hour and a half just to get to the Silverdome, and it just wasn't an easy place to get to. They were so loud, and the thing in Detroit is we practiced in the Silverdome, and it was a forced air stadium, so the ceiling was held up by just air. They just blew air into the building. And you'd think, okay, it's really cold in Michigan in the winter, and you're like, well, I'm fine because I'm inside. But they blew all the cold air from outside inside, so we're practicing, in our winter gear inside in Detroit. So it just was a miserable place. Both of those places were extremely loud. The surface that existed back then, the artificial turf, should have been outlawed, should be outlawed. It was about, I don't know, maybe 2 inches of this like foam outdoor carpet basically on top of asphalt. And places like the Metrodome and the Pontiac Silverdome it was horrendous. And it was such a bad surface. Today it's so much nicer, the synthetic turf surfaces, and a lot of indoor stadiums now they grow grass and have grass. I know Allegiant Stadium with the Raiders in Las Vegas is like that, and it's just changed dramatically. Always a really hard place to play in the Metrodome. Very loud when the crowd was going. Actually, you know what? You guys asked me about my best memory there. I actually did win in Minnesota. I remember throwing a fade route to Herman Moore late in the game, and we came back and won. I think that was 1996, and that actually put us in the playoffs that year. So sorry for your Vikings losing that day, but yeah, that was I just came back to my mind.
That's funny. And, as we look at your great career, all the teams that you were with and everything, people don't realize that, you had to come in and basically take over for Dan Marino when he, went down. Tell us what that was like to go in and suddenly replace a legend, not expecting to have to jump in and take over for a legend that was going to be a future Hall of Famer. Did we lose Scott for a second there? Have we got Scott? Is Scott hearing us? Do I have you? Troy, do you have us? All right, we'll just tap dance for a second here as we lost Scott. And I was just going to tease him a little bit too, and hopefully he jumps back on for a second. As again, we get the kinks out, but there we go. Scott is back with us. And Scott, I don't know if you heard the question, but I was wondering, as a rookie, you had to jump in and replace Dan Marino. If you could kind of take us through what that was like, replacing a future Hall of Famer.
So Dan Marino was a rock star. When I got to Miami, I was drafted. I can remember to this day the moment I saw Marino for the first time, and I was starstruck. I was a fanboy. I mean, this was Dan Marino. I mean, and he was just the coolest guy in the world. He was such an iconic figure. And every day, so I played for the Dolphins for 4 years. I was drafted there in 1990. Every day, I sat in meetings between Don Shula and Dan Marino, and it was the coolest experience of my life. Just how amazing these two individuals were, legendary Hall of Fame types of people. And here I was, this kid from Springville, Utah, sitting in the midst of all of this, and it was just quite an experience, and all of the things I learned. And I never played. I mean, Dan always played. I think at the time he had, I don't know, 119 starts, without missing a game. And my first 3 in the NFL, I very rarely played. We were actually in Cleveland the first game I played, and I'd been in the hospital the night before the game. I got really sick on the airplane going to Cleveland, and they said, "There's no way in the world you'll play in the game." And our athletic trainer said, "Well, it doesn't matter because he doesn't play anyway." So they put me in a hotel room by myself. I had this highly contagious form of pink eye, I guess, is what they told me. And I'm laying there, I'm puking my guts out, and all night long I don't sleep. I go to our pregame meal in the morning, and the doctor says, "How do you feel?" And I go, "Well, I could play in an emergency if I had to, but I have no energy." So he told me, "Go on the field, dress, don't warm up, and just stay away from everyone." Well, a quarter and a half into the game, Dan Marino drops back, blows out his Achilles, and Shula turns to me and goes, "Mitchell, you're in." And this is really the first time I've ever played in an NFL game. We're in the old Cleveland Municipal Stadium. I haven't warmed up. I didn't throw a single pass. I didn't sweat. I didn't sweat a drop. I didn't stretch a muscle, nothing. And I have to go into an NFL game. And not only go in the game, we're on the 8-yard line going in to score. It's third down and 5 from the 8-yard line. They call a pass play. I throw it to Irving Fryer. He slips and falls down. And Najee Mustafa intercepts my first pass and returns it for a touchdown. And I'm just mortified. I'm like, I can't believe, I threw an interception for a touchdown on my first pass. So the next, so we get the ball right back because they just scored. And my next pass is actually intercepted. But the guy's out of bounds. And so we run the clock out, go into halftime, and Coach Shula is like, "Hey, everything's going to be fine. We're going to win this game." And I looked around the locker room, and everyone's like, "No, it's not going to be fine. This guy's not Dan Marino, and he's never played, and he was sick, and he's throwing interceptions." So he came out after halftime, and I just knew I needed to say something to my teammates. So in the huddle, because we got the ball first possession, and I just looked at everyone and I just said, "Don't worry about me. Just do your job, and we're going to be just fine." So in the second half, I threw for 250 yards. I had 3 more touchdowns to our team. So I had 4 touchdowns on the day. And I was named AFC Offensive Player of the Week in the first game I played in the NFL. Wow. And what was so strange to me was how easy it was. I had a moment in that game, and it was like one of the top 5 moments of my entire life. And what happened is I was walking out of the huddle, and I just been on fire, right? I mean, I was just playing so good, and I looked over, and I was facing the Cleveland Browns defense, and I looked at Clay Matthews, who played 23 years in the NFL. And he was a great player, and I remember looking at him going, "I own Clay Matthews today." And it was in that moment that I knew that I belonged in the NFL, and I knew that this dream that I'd had my whole entire life had become a reality. And it was just the coolest moment to know that you're playing with and you're one of the best players in the entire world. Amazing moment in my life.
Well, it really was. And I know you've played all over the world, and I don't want to monopolize, but I do have to make a comment when we talked about that turf that you guys played on at the in the old Pontiac Silverdome. Augsburg University, where I played college football in Minnesota, bought that crappy old turf, and they put it on our field at just right next to the Metrodome, and we had to play on your crappy. I still have scars in my elbows and everything like that. So I'd like to not thank you for that turf, but I know Will and Troy have a couple more questions before we delve in deep, and I just want to let people know too. Thanks again for joining us, and I want people to know about your book. I mean, you have this amazing book called Alive Again. You can get it on Amazon.com or other things. I know you're a motivational speaker, and it just kind of shows the results that you did to make those changes in your life. And, how has that book helped you kind of reflect? And was it like therapy for you?
So you kind of broke up there, and I believe you were talking about the book I wrote. And really, it kind of boils down to, I had this experience when my dad, where I was with him in a hospital. I knew he was going to die. Now, like I was speechless. I was like, I had to say goodbye to my dad, and it was I didn't have the words, and I'd watched it the previous 6 years. Just his body was just ravaged with all kinds of sickness, and he'd had amputations and had just some of the most disgusting things happen to him in his dealing with this disease of diabetes. And I just didn't have words, and I just couldn't say goodbye and didn't know what to say. And they closed the door to the and when they did, there was a picture of a butterfly on the wall. And when I looked at it, I just was flooded with this, just, I don't know, inspiration or clarity or understanding. I don't know, it just came from a place, it's hard to describe, but it just was a very spiritual moment for me. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, you're like this old worn out caterpillar that's going to go in this cocoon for a while, and it'll be like you're dead. And I said, but one day you'll come back to life again, and you'll be this amazing, beautiful butterfly. And so all this sickness won't be there anymore, and you'll come back to life. And I believe that. And I believe that death is, there'll be a resurrection. I believe that we'll all live for ultimately. And it just gave me this, that it was okay that he died. And then after that experience, and after my dad died,
Oh, that's the rigors of live TV, of having those times that they pop up.
we can find that greatness within ourselves, because that's really what happened to the caterpillar, right? And it morphs into this beautiful creature, and it does it within itself. It doesn't go plastic surgery. It doesn't have pill. It just finds a way to see its greatest potential within what it is. But the other side of it is, we have these struggles in our life, and these challenges, and these hard things that happen. And those are the things that, when we become that beautiful butterfly, we appreciate it so much more. I can all of a sudden, it can fly, it can go anywhere. And it's truly an amazing miracle of nature, that whole transformation process. And it just really struck with me. And so, actually, I woke up yesterday morning and I was like, I've had an amazing life, and it's not all been easy. It was hard. I felt that my NFL career could have been more, and it's hard to see the success. Some of the other players I played with in the NFL, that won Super Bowls and Hall of Fame and all that, and they were contemporaries of mine. And a lot, in a lot of ways, I felt like my career was a disappointment, and it could have been and should have been a whole lot more. And as I look back, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the challenges that I had and I've had in my life, whatever they've been. They truly have been the greatest blessings I've had. The hard things, the embarrassing things, the difficult things, quite frankly, have just been such an amazing blessing to me, because they've given me a perspective, understanding I don't think I would have gained any other way in my life. And it's taken a long time to get to that point. When you're a professional athlete and it all ends, it is so hard to make that adjustment, and to move on, and to accept whatever happened. And I think every athlete who, regardless of the level of success they have or the duration of their career, it's just hard to walk away from that and never have that anymore.
Okay, 1994, you were a free agent, first time your career. Can you talk about the process and what ultimately helped you decide to sign with the Detroit Lions?
I don't know if you know this, but it boiled down to two teams: the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. I almost became a Minnesota Viking. I was like that close. And really, I don't know. It was kind of like both places were the same for me. It was an amazing process, because free agency existed, and just the opportunity to go somewhere. I loved playing for the Miami Dolphins. I didn't want to leave, quite frankly, but there wasn't an opportunity for me, and I was behind a great player, and so to be able to go out and become a starting quarterback in the NFL, and live that dream that I had as a kid, was just an amazing experience to be able to just do that. And a lot of people fought for a lot of years for that ability to have that freedom, and I was one of the first people to experience that. And when, so it was fun to go. I had 5 teams that I actually visited, a lot like going to college. And Brian Billick was the offensive coordinator for the Vikings at the time. Dennis Green had been at Stanford. I knew a lot of the coaches. Tony Dungy was the defensive coordinator at the time for the Vikings. Really, I loved it there, and in a lot of ways thought I it could have been a good fit for me. And uh, and it almost felt like it was a coin toss between Detroit and Minnesota. And I look back on it now, and I think it was a better fit for me offensively to go to Detroit. And a lot of things there, I can give you kind of a fascinating history lesson here about what happened in Detroit, because it's pretty remarkable. We incorporated, so I go to Detroit, and I sign a con that's like unheard of, right, at the time. I mean, people are just like, he got what, and I can tell you what it was. I got $11.5 million for 3 years. So I think it was like $3.5 million a year that's what I made. Entire salary cap at that time was $35 million that they spent on, and now I think it's over $200 million. And, an average quarterback in the NFL makes $33 million a year, as much as the whole salary cap was. So, but at the time it was just unheard of, the money. And so I go to Detroit, and our offensive coordinator is a guy, Tom Moore. And I go to Detroit, and we have Barry Sanders, who was just amazing. But Barry Sanders was not really a quarterback's friend, because Barry Sanders would run, and a lot of times he would run out of bounds after running 40 yards back and forth for a 2-yard loss. I mean, he just wasn't a Robert Smith kind of running back. Robert Smith was a more efficient, you're going to get 4 or 5 yards. You might get but and Barry Sanders was a small guy, and he wasn't going to block. He was a guy that was like, because he wasn't big enough. He was just kind of a littler guy. And they kind of got to a point. They said, you really need to make a choice. You brought this guy here. You got to let him throw the ball. And so I sat down with Tom Moore, and we kind of invented or streamlined our offense. And a lot of it was what I had done with the Miami Dolphins, a lot of the concepts. And so in 1995, we have this amazing year where I throw for 4,400 yards and 33 touchdowns, have 2 wide receivers that have over 1,000 yards in receiving. Both of them catch over 100 passes. Barry Sanders rushes for 1,500 yards. And we had this explosive offense. And what was sad about it is a year later, they fire Wayne Fontes, and off goes Tom Moore. And Tom Moore ends up in Indianapolis and basically runs the same offense we're running in Detroit with a guy named Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning has this Hall of Fame career with the offense that we predominantly ran in Detroit. And then, in fact, about 6 months ago, Tom Moore is still in the NFL, and he's with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Bruce Arians and Tom Brady, and they're still running those same concepts, and go all the way back to Johnny Unitas. So the offense that we ran in Miami started with Shula when he was with the head coach with the Baltimore Ravens. So you've got an offense that started with Johnny Unitas, Hall of Fame quarterback, goes through Bob Greasy, Hall of Fame quarterback, Dan Marino, Hall of Fame quarterback, and then it skips a generation, and then it goes to Peyton Manning, Hall of Fame quarterback, and Tom Brady, Hall of Fame quarterback. So what the heck's wrong with me, right? and really, had Tom Moore stayed in Detroit and we'd run that offense, who knows what would have happened. And that's one of those hard things, you kind of wish was a little different in your career. But my whole entire career in the NFL was an amazing experience, and it would have been amazing if I'd have gone to Minnesota, and I'm really grateful for my whole time. Really, I played with and against some of the greatest players of all time, had an amazing experience, lived a childhood dream, and did it, for 12 years, and it was pretty special.
Cool. So I want to give you a movie reference. So everybody knows the movie There's Something of Mary.
Uh-huh.
There's something about Barry. What was that something about Barry, and how did he make you and the guys around you better?
Well, as a running back and as a talent, I don't know that there's ever really been anyone like Barry Sanders. Just the way he was physically built. He was this low to the ground, a very powerful, runner. And the best way to describe Barry is, I watched some of the best players to ever play football, Hall of Fame guys, and I watched Barry Sanders make those guys look silly. Like I can name off, John Lynch, who's in the Hall of Fame, had Barry Sanders in the backfield, dead to rights, and I don't know that Barry even did anything. He just kind of wiggled a little bit, and John Lynch was like he was frozen, and Barry Sanders just ran right around him and scored like a 50-yard touchdown. I saw Barry do it. Same thing to Cornelius Bennett. I saw him do it to Rod Woodson. And they had him dead to rights. I mean, they had him in the backfield. There's no way out, and Barry Sanders just left them frozen. And he would make cuts, and he would be going full speed. And when he would cut, a lot of times people have to kind of gather themselves a little bit. They slow down and then they speed back up. But he would cut one direction and he'd be going the other direction. And it was always full speed. There was a game against the Chicago Bears, and it was a Thanksgiving game. And I remember Barry went through the line to the left, and he got into the secondary, and everybody was pursuing him to the left. And he made a cut back to the right, and it was like he froze everyone, the whole entire defense, and he just went to the right against the grain and scores a touchdown. His ability to his ability to make those cuts at full speed was I just never saw anybody do it. And when you're a part of it every day, it becomes normal. Well, that's just everyone is, and that's part of when you realize how special he was. Other guys would go in the game, or you would watch other running backs in the NFL, and you'd go, oh, if that was Barry Sanders, that would have been a touchdown. And he just had a special ability that no one possessed. And part of it, Barry's not a tall guy, so running scrimmage, he's hard to see it to, and then he's on you and he's by you and he's on, and it just made it really, really hard. So in some ways, his height, you may argue, was a deterrent, but it part of what helped him great. He was an amazing team. Just everyone thought he was really quiet, and he actually wasn't. We went to an event. Oh, we were driving in a car, and I'm like, and I was like, man, I'm going to be stuck in a car with Barry Sanders, who doesn't say anything, for like 3 hours, because that was kind of the perception I think people had of him. And after the 3 hours, I was like, man, I got to get out of this car. This guy hasn't shut up for like this whole time. And he was actually very, very engaging guy, very well, he's a thinker, but he was an amazing teammate. And that was, quite frankly, my whole career. Marino was just so special. I mean, every day at practice, watching him throw passes just in practice was like watching an artist at work. I mean, Brett Favre, speaking of something about Mary, Brett Favre was like, look, you can all say what you want. The guy who throws the ball the best in the NFL is Dan Marino, hands down, no question asked. He's the purest passer there is in the game. And if you want to argue with me, I'm going to tell you you're crazy. There's no one like Dan Marino. And it was true. He was so special. And so playing with him, playing with Barry, I played with Ray Lewis and Rod Woodson in Baltimore, just some really, really special players. Jonathan Ogden, I mean, Jonathan Ogden, arguably be greatest tackle in professional football history. I mean, he was an amazing individual, a great player.
Okay, I have a question about you went to the University of Utah. For those that don't know, what do you think about this Pac-12 realignment stuff going on right now? Like I said, USC and UCLA leaving to the Big Ten. It's rumored University of Utah might join the Big 12. What are your thoughts on these super conferences?
Well, for Utah, who there's a real shot for Utah to be in the college football playoffs this year. They've got a really, really good football team. Cam Rising, the quarterback, was exceptional last year. They lost a tough game in the Rose Bowl to Ohio State. He played well. Most of the team's back. They were a very young team. They Florida the first game of the year in Gainesville, and that'll be a big game. But Utah's the best team in the Pac-12, and that's what's hard is here's a team that was kind of a G5 type of team, and they go undefeated. They get into the Fiesta Bowl against Pitt, and the late '90s, actually it's the early 2000s. So they become a bowl buster, right? They get into a New Year's Day game. Then a couple of years later, Alex at Utah and Urban Meyer, and Utah has again an undefeated season, plays Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, beats Alabama. So as a group of 5 team, they do everything they can to become a Power 5 school, get invited to the Pac-12, kind of struggle early on there, and now they've been to the championship game 3 of the last 4 years and won it last year and go to the Rose Bowl. So here's a program that's been on the rise for the last 20 plus years, and they've done everything. They're a really, really good program. They're a top 15 program in the country, should be every single year. And yet the only relevance in the Pac-12 is if it's really just USC. Like if USC is not in the Pac-12, the Pac-12 is dead. And so for USC to leave, and USC hasn't been good. I mean, Lincoln Riley coming is, finally woke USC up because, USC it's just an amazing program. And without USC, there is no Pac-12. And it's just like the Big 12. Without Oklahoma and Texas, there is no Big 12. And the reason is because all of college football is run by TV. I mean, college football, we can all pretend everyone's a part of it. College football is 2 conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC. And they run everything. And so nothing's really changed in college football in my mind. The powerful teams, the blue blood programs are still the blue blood programs, and they're going to benefit, and they're going to remain the powerful teams in all of college football. And that power is just being centralized into a smaller group of people. And it feels to me like the Big Ten and the SEC are ultimately going to probably break off and just create their own thing. Now, who all gets invited to that, I don't know. But college football is driven by money. It's driven by the TV dictates everything. And this move was all about USC and UCLA getting more money. The tradition of college football is gone. the Pac-12 had a great tradition, and it's unfortunate for schools like Utah that really they'll never be a powerful program in the country because it's just, if Salt Lake had a bigger TV market, it's just a challenge, and that's where everything is. It's can you create enough value in your TV market to justify being a part of the program, and Utah really is kind of on the border on that. And people are talking about, we'll go to the Big 12. The Big 12 isn't any different. It's not any different than the Pac-12 right now without these bigger market schools and programs. I think Utah at the end of the day will be fine, but CJ Stroud, who is a Southern California kid, I think there's a couple of other. They're all Heisman Trophy candidates this year, and they're all from Southern California. And USC was always like they got the best players in the country, and they're not. And CJ Stroud said, "Why do I want to play in a half full stadium when I can go to Ohio State? I can have the success I've had. I can be a Heisman Trophy candidate. I can play in front of 89,000 people, and I'm the talk of college football every Saturday. And I go to USC, which is the story, and I'm an afterthought. I'm on after dark. There's not the same hype, and so USC realizing with all of the NIL deals and the money that they need to generate and the exposure these players are demanding today, they had no choice but to move if they wanted to be and remain relevant in college athletics. And I think UCLA is a great brand. I think UCLA is more along for the ride. It's kind of like, well, okay, you got this little brother here, bring him along. But the main get, I believe, for the Big Ten was USC.
Scott, I can kind of associate a little bit of what you went through. I hope if you can see this, I'm going to put it up on the screen. During COVID, I don't have legs, but I had ballooned up, and it was really tough for me to try to lose that weight. But I saw what you did. I was inspired by what you did. I dumped 55 pounds. So, with that success that you had, overcoming that, I'm just curious as to, what was the lowest point and what got you to the point of where you had that success so you could turn your life around?
Sorry here. So for me,
oh no. Well, he should jump back in, but this has just been an amazing, just some insight. And here he is back again. That's live TV. Okay, Scott, you started to say for me, so I'll let you continue.
Yeah, you broke up. I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, just real quick, the question was, I lost weight. It was tough for me, but I'm wondering what your lowest point was for you and how you overcame that to have those successes.
A lot of it was, well, there was a moment for me, and I was on The Biggest Loser, and I'd been on the show for about a month, and I would hike every morning in the Santa Monica Mountains. In fact, it was right by where they filmed the TV show MASH, and I would hike in those mountains all the time, and so I had nothing to do. I mean, I was isolated from the world. I was away from my family. And so every morning I'd get up and I'd hike and I'd think about my life and, try to figure out, okay, well, why'd you gain all this weight? And in about a month being in it, I just stopped one day in the middle of the trail. I sat down on this dusty, dirty trail and I just said, I'm going to quit. I don't want to go through this anymore. I don't want to be in this public forum. I don't want to examine my life. It's too painful. It's not fun. And I'm quit. I'm going to go back to my room. I'm going to pack my bags. I'm going to walk out of here. And as I was sitting there on the ground, and I couldn't, for whatever reason, I just started to cry, and I couldn't stop crying. I was just sobbing, and I couldn't even control it. It just came out of me. I was just like, I am just out of here. And this voice just came into my head, and I don't know where it came from or what it was, but it was just like, just don't quit right now. Just find a way to get up, because if you quit, you will live with this, and you'll regret this for the rest of your life. And so I'm talking to myself and this voice, wherever it came from, because it just came into my head. I said, you know what? I've done this my whole life. I've gotten up, and I've never quit, and I've just, I've fought through things. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I am done. And the voice came back again and said, just find a way to get up one more time. And so I did. And I didn't really want to. And the next morning I was laying in my bed. I woke up, and I was just kind of, somewhat depressed and just not happy to be there. And this just thought came into my mind, where all of the things that you've been through are where you find joy. And it just kind of sunk in for a minute, and I was like, so my success in life has been built on a mountain of sorrow. And it was like, well, how could that be? And what happened to me was, I realized that to really understand what joy was and what happiness, I needed to experience the opposite. And all of the things, that the challenges I've had, the disappointments, the struggles I've had in my life, what I realized in that moment was, they'd given me and brought out in me characteristics and traits that I didn't realize I had. So I had the ability to be patient. I had the ability to persevere. I had the ability to be forgiving. And I had a greater ability to have compassion. And I realized I'd learned all of these amazing things and developed all of these traits I didn't even realize I had. And they all came out of this struggle. And so in that moment, I just realized what really how much joy there was in my life, because to that point, I didn't really feel a lot of joy. I mean, I had a former teammate, a guy that I invited into my home when I played for the Detroit Lions. I had a guy that I had bought gifts for, really nice gifts. He was an offensive lineman, and he in public said that he tried to get me hurt in a game. It was Lomas Brown, and when he said this publicly on ESPN, and it was so devastating to me, and it was very hurtful. When I got introduced in Detroit for 5 years, every time I was introduced before a game, I was booed. And I wasn't. It was just how it was. It was like I was the starting quarterback for the Detroit Lions, and they hated me. And I can't even begin to tell you how hard that is, like, to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Like, I couldn't go out in public. I couldn't, and just the ridicule that I got in my career as a professional athlete, it was brutal. And you feel, you know what, you feel like, you suck. And I hated it. And so, and I've had other, challenges in my life, whatever, but those were some hard things. And then getting benched by Bobby Ross was just the worst thing in the world. And it was all later he actually apologized to me, said he shouldn't have done it, and there's a whole story behind it that I'm not going to get into. But so you have these really humiliating things happen to you in your life, and at the time they were so painful and they hurt so much, and yet I've been able to find the beauty in all of that, and it really is, and that was really a moment for me when I realized that my my biggest challenges in life and the things I thought were my biggest disappointments were actually some of the greatest successes I had, because I made it through it. I persevered through it, and it ended up being just a beautiful, amazing thing for me. But it took a long time. It was not easy.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for just, letting us in and so intimate. I mean, most people don't really, let us into that kind of a world and what you've been through and the successes. But before we let you go, and again, thank you for being with us. You can get your book. And where is that? Also on Amazon, other places we can get it?
I have no idea. I really, the book is something that I wrote, and I haven't really promoted it. And I just wrote it because I wanted to. You can find it on, I believe, Amazon. I seriously don't know. And I wrote it so long, but thank you for pushing it. But it's not something that I'm.
If we sell one copy, it is available, used in hardback, and all those good things. But before we leave, I want to get back on a fun note. You had an opportunity to play in the World Football League back in the day, when the league was trying to create almost a minor league or a feeding system. So it's not glamorous like it is now when they go to London and all those places. I'm just wondering, what was that season like for your Orlando and you being in places that aren't meant for football, locker rooms? Like, do you have some really weird, bad memories from that experience?
So you kind of broke up a little bit. Were you talking about the World League?
Yeah, about what was the lows of the locker rooms and the food. Like it's not glamorous like it is now.
So the World League was the best thing I ever did, and it was one of the most fun times I've ever had in my life playing football. I had to beg the Miami Dolphins to let me go play. And people were like, no real NFL player goes and plays in the World League. But I never got to play because I was behind Dan Marino. And I was like, I want to go and do whatever I can to get experience. And so I was with a bunch of guys who just wanted to go and play football. But it was a humbling experience because, the whole setup is not like the NFL at all. But the football was really good. I mean, I played in Orlando. We had about 45,000 people that showed up. I was on national TV every weekend in the spring. We played in the World Bowl. It was a great experience. And to me, I describe it like, you always say, boy, if I could go back in life knowing what I know now, and if I could go back, I'd be so much better. And that's what I felt like. I felt like my time in the NFL, I'd learned so much, even though I didn't play a lot. And then I went back and I was just so much of a better player. But our offense in Orlando, I think every single guy except for our center ended up being a starter on an NFL team. And we had a really, really good team. It was a great experience. And for me, it was really taking one step backwards in my career to go 3 or 4 steps forward, because I was a different player when I came back after that. And that was after my second year in the NFL. It was right in the middle of my career.
Awesome stuff. Thanks again, Scott, for joining us. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk with us. And if you ever want to come back on in the future, talk about anything, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, I always love to come on. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott. And again, Will, Troy, this was fun. I want to keep doing this. You guys are great. This is fun. We got a great guy like Scott that joined us, and we got Marty Cordova coming up. I mean, You know, so thank you for letting me be a part of this, guys.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, Dave.
All
It's
right.
always a pleasure.
That'll do it for this show this week. Make sure you follow us, click on likes, share us, do all those great things that are going to help the Geary, Stein, and Steven show. For myself, for Troy and Will, let's have you guys wave, right? Have a good night, everybody.